Hi. Thank you for coming. Also, just thank you so much. No, yes, let's hear this. Um, it's a hot, hot summer day. We could all be outside. Thank you. But that you've come here just means so much. If it's your first time here, there's information outside on how to become a producer here, how to get involved with WCAT. Very exciting. This is nearly the inaugural version of this show, which was the brainchild of Deb, who's in the director's booth. I can't even see her. Called The Stories We Tell. If you've ever seen Stories from the Stage on WGBH or listened to The Moth or any of these true stories told live situations, seen fugitive stories, this is sort of the same idea. My name is Sarah. I'm a storyteller that lives here in Winthrop, not born and raised, but I've got 11 years so far. And I'm happy to be part of the WCAT team and making this show happen. And I'm so grateful for the people that came to tell stories today and or just watch. It makes it a lot more fun to have an audience. That's for sure. So we're going to get started. We are filming this. This will be on television, Channel 3. So our first storyteller today is a friend, a wonderful woman, a fantastic lady. Her name is Robin Schoenthaler. She is a writer, a storyteller, a mom, and a pretty awesome cancer doctor. So give her a big round of applause. Robin.
That's always so scary. The mic, most terrifying thing. I just want to say before I get started that the one thing that I learned in COVID is how much I worship audiences. Thank you so, so much for being open and listeners and involved and coming out of our homes. Thank you. So one night in late December 1982, my dispatcher at Acme Ambulance in Oakland, California, told me that my partner for New Year's Eve was going to be Julia. I was genuinely confused and said to him, "But girls can't work with girls." And he sneered and said, "What's the matter? Ain't you never heard of women's lib?" I had heard of Women's Lib. Women's Lib had helped me get this job as an EMT 3 years before. Women's Lib and the 4 trailblazing women who had come before me a few months prior to that. We all still worked there along with another half dozen or so women, but we never worked together. We always had male partners. I had never for a moment even thought about having a female partner. First off, I loved my guy partners. They were like my big brothers. But also, they were big. And they were things like big wannabe firemen, big ex-tow truck drivers. Their bigness and their maleness helped me feel safer on the streets of Oakland, which is no small thing. Julia, on the other hand, was a very small thing. Little Ms. Matchstick, we called her. And even though I knew that she was smart and competent, she was this 24-year-old black woman who'd been raised in Oakland, she certainly knew her way around. But all I could think about was how teeny she was and how could 2 women possibly be safe on the streets of Oakland, particularly on New Year's Eve. And I dreaded the shift. And I'm embarrassed to say that. The dreaded shift arrived anyway, as dreaded shifts always do. And we had the overnight graveyard shift, and by 12:04, we'd already gotten a call to a New Year's Eve Oakland classic, gunshot wound to the foot. It was the tradition in Oakland for large crowds to gather and commemorate the turning of the new year by firing their guns into the air. But there was always one drunk guy, usually named Big Joe, who was so drunk that he didn't realize that he'd forgotten to lift his arm up. And with his hand by his side, he accidentally shot himself in the foot. We screech up to the scene, and that's exactly what's happened. Julia and I divide up the work. I run to this year's Big Joe's side. I established that he's stable, and I look up pretty anxiously to see how Julia's dealing with this really big, upset crowd, mostly armed, and I need not have worried in the slightest. Julia's coming towards us with the gear and the gurney, and she's got the crowd basically in the palm of her hands. And by the time she gets to us, she's gotten bigger, and she's so tall, she's looking with direct eye contact at all these super tall, upset guys, and she has them all organized, and they help us get Big Joe on the gurney and Big Joe into the rig. They even direct traffic so we can whisk Big Joe off to the hospital. Big Joe does fine. It's a through and through, flesh wound. But I can't wait to talk to Julia about how she's done this. How does she manage like this? And she starts laughing. She knows exactly what I'm talking about. And she says, in the 2 seconds that we have before our next call, she says, I had 2 little brothers, and we were raised in the projects. And by the time I was 12, I was learning to be large and in charge, pretty much on the daily. And we get the next call, and she does the same thing, and the next call, and the next call. And all night long, I watch her in wonder as she does this again and again. Finally, it's 2 minutes before shift change. We get the last call, always the first and the last. And we run to this nearby neighborhood for what's called a sunrise code. We have nicknames for all the terrible things that we see in Oakland. A sunrise code is when someone has died in the middle of the night, but their body isn't discovered until dawn. So we know that's what this is because as soon as we pull up to the house, this 15-year-old black girl comes running out, screaming that her grandfather is dead. It's the most terrible thing that's ever happened in this poor girl's life. She takes one look at Julia, throws herself into her arms with such velocity, I honestly think they're going to tip right over into the street. But Julia's already large and in charge. She straightens them up, waves at me. I go into the house and confirm, I look at the patient, examine him, talk to the police, and confirm that he has died some hours before. He doesn't need an ambulance. He needs a coroner. And I go back outside, and Julia is still holding on to this girl. She's rocking her. She's crooning to her. And she does so for like the next 20 minutes till the girl's mom comes and picks her up. By this point, I'm completely smitten with Julia, and I say, I want to be your partner for the rest of my life. And we do work together a handful more times, and at each shift, she teaches me something about how she does what she does. Some of it's just eye contact, walking tall, seeking out the leaders. And then there's also something she calls talking chest proud. And then in May, in an astonishing turn of events, I'm accepted at the age of 29 into medical school. And I leave Oakland behind. But when I get to UCLA, I find out that the medical school class is comprised of 20% women. It's actually a worse ratio than we had at Acme. And so for the next 4 years of med school, I continue to apply Julia's lessons about being large and in charge in sometimes hostile environments, pretty much on the daily. I also spend the next 10 years, well, actually my whole career, eating in cheap hospital cafeterias, where the ambulance drivers come in. And every year, more and more of the crews consist of 2 women. And it becomes commonplace and routine, and nobody notices. But I notice every 2-woman ambulance crew. I can't stop gazing at them. And I want to say to them, look at you. So gorgeous and so young and so utterly confident that you belong in this job, this crazy job in your navy blue uniform, working with another woman. Do you know about my partner, Julia? Do you know you carry, Julia and I, the first 2-woman ambulance team in the history of Northern California, with you every time you carry a gurney and every time you slide out of the rig onto the street? You should. Of course, I don't say anything like that because that would be really, really, really weird. But I do stare at them. And I think a lot about what a miracle it is that this huge change, this radical, astonishing, invisible change has taken place in my lifetime. And every time it happens, especially in times when it feels like everything is hopeless and going backwards, when this happens, I go back to work and I feel a little more hopeful and a little more large and in charge. Thank you.
Sorry, didn't think we'd cry on the first one. Wow, thank you so much, Robin. That is, I love at the end when she's like, and guess what? It's historical. Woof. Thank you. That was fantastic. Trying to not be emotional because then you get into like current events, and I was like, oh God, don't throw up and cry on the show. Our next storyteller is Miss Theresa Okokin, who is a phenomenal lady, writer, memoirist, and the host of Stories from the Stage on WGBH. She is just maybe one of my favorite fashion plates of all time. Please, a big round of applause for Theresa.
Thank you, Sarah. So, around the time that I was turning 33 years old, I decided that grown-ups need to be able to offer their guests a proper drink. Up until that time, the only drinks that I was ever able to offer anyone who visited my home was tap water, coffee or tea made with tap water, or a glass of wine from a bottle that I had opened several days before that was either sitting on the countertop or sitting in my fridge. And I was like, grown-ups can make a Manhattan. They can make a Vesper. They can make a brandy old-fashioned sweet with 2 cherries. Like, I'm going to have a full bar in my home, and I'm going to learn how to make all of those drinks. Well, having a full bar in your home is extremely expensive. Like, a single bottle of alcohol costs like, pushing $20. To make a Manhattan, a Vesper, and a whiskey brandy old fashioned sweet with 2 cherries is like at least 3 base liquor bottles, like different bottles of liquor. That's $60. Like, I don't have that kind of money. So I was like, what I do have is a bunch of very wonderful, very generous friends and a birthday coming up. So I threw myself what I called a Build-A-Bar birthday party, where I provided the mixers and the hors d'oeuvres, and all of my friends came over, and the only gift I asked for was bottles of hard liquor. Even if they weren't full, I didn't care. Any kind of bottle of hard liquor, just bring it over. We had a great time. Everybody imbibed and got a little bit loose, and the next morning I had a full bar in my home. And in the years that came after that, I became a little bit of like a sort of home mixologist expert. I had several Build-A-Bar parties after that. I got all kinds of different bitters. My friends tend to refer to me like a bit of a Pandora when it comes to making drinks. Like, you just tell me what you like, or just like a couple of vibe words, and I'll figure out a cocktail that's gonna wet your whistle just the way you want it to. There are many things that I kind of started to convince myself are things that grown-ups do, right? And one of them was also falling in love. I had thought many times as a younger person that I had fallen in love, and as I got older, I was like pretty sure I'd fallen in something, and it probably wasn't love. And while I was waiting to fall in love, I was sort of also creating this checklist of things that I would do when I was in love. I called it my list for when I'm in love. And on that list was a number of things. One of them was going to Canada. I'm from Wisconsin. I'd been a New Englander for like 10 years at this point, and I had never crossed the border to Canada. And I felt like that was just extremely silly. And I was like, when I'm in love, I will go to Canada. You know, I had this list of destination, like dream little cabins on my Airbnb. And I was like, one day I'm going to be in love and I'm going to go to Canada and I'm going to stay in one of these really cute Airbnbs. And then like the years just kept tacking on and I was like, it's not happening. Okay. I'm going to Canada by myself. So I, took a long weekend, packed up my car, drove across the border. The border agent literally was like, why are you coming here? Are you going on a date? And I was like, I'm not. And then I didn't tell them the rest of the story about I'm doing it because I'm doing the things for when I'm in love by myself. But I went to Magog or Magog or something like that. I don't remember how to pronounce it. And I ate all of the poutine that I wanted. And I saw monks chanting and took home their cheese and their meat. And it was a wonderful trip. And then I continued to do things that were on my for when I'm in love list, including stopping living with roommates and getting a place of my own. And I got a dog, and I got, instead of having just one single pillow that I bought at Big Lots on my bed, I bought 4 hotel quality pillows with like delicately colored satin pillowcases, and now I sleep by myself on my bed with 4 pillows. And I'm trying to buy a house, which is a very long story that we won't get into, and that story is very, very far from over. But there's all these things that I was like, if the love's not coming, I'm going to do these things on my own. Now, before the pillowcases and the fancy pillows, and before trying to buy a house, and before my dog, and before deciding that I was going to become a mixologist so I can give you fancy drinks if you come to my house, I had also decided that one thing as an adult that I was never going to do was have a child. Now, I am a woman, a cis woman, and I was socialized to believe that when you're an adult, you fall in love and you have a child, or even if you don't fall in love, you have a child. Like that's part of being a grown-up. But I think it was probably sometime around before the cocktails, before 33, I think I was like 31, 32, when I finally admitted to myself that that was not a thing that I actually ever wanted to do. And, a couple of partners later, I started to admit it out loud to other people as well. And for my whole life, that's been something that I felt like was my choice, my decision, and I could make that decision independently until, of course, yesterday happened. And luckily, I live in Rhode Island and I pretend that I live in Massachusetts, and abortion is protected in both of those states, and I feel safe for myself. I'm not worried about myself. But my family is in Wisconsin, which is in one of those gray zones, and this is bigger than me and my family and my friends. Like so much of this country is in these red zones where it's just not an individual's choice anymore. And that's kind of scary. It's real scary. Now, I've been telling stories for years. I teach storytelling, and I always teach that stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You can put them in whatever order you want, really, but they need to end somewhere, and I don't have an ending for this story that I'm telling you today. I still haven't bought my house, and I still haven't fallen in love, and I've never been to Mexico, so that's another border that I'm going to have to cross at some point. And I have never been faced with the decision of needing to have an abortion. And I pray, like if I believed that there was a God, I would pray to her that what happened yesterday is also not the end of this story. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Theresa. I thought about today's event. Like I almost was like, we can't do this today. I'm just depressed. I just want to freaking cry. But I'm really glad that we're all here and we're talking about this stuff and we're being together and just feeling the feels. Because yesterday was like, personally, just a kick in the crotch. Yeah, fuck that day. Sorry, Deb, gonna have to beep that out. You could just cut this whole part of me talking out, frankly. But woof, I'm glad it's the tomorrow of yesterday, but I need it to be the tomorrow of now, like way in the future, the spaceship time. Our next storyteller is a man named David. Some people say he looks familiar. You might think so. Can I tell him why? I don't know. Let's see. Find out if he looks familiar. You can talk to him later. He used to have the hair on his face on the top of his head. I'll give you that clue. Let's hear it for David Brown.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So we all work and live in a world of deadlines, right? So I'm sitting in the reception area. My name is called. I walk down this long hallway. The receptionist is walking with me, and she gives me a jar. And as we enter the room, and she says, "This is the jar you're going to want to put your sample in. Make sure you put the lid on, lock the door, and have fun." Fun? I didn't even know where I was going to sit. In this room, there was an examination table with stirrups. There was a metal desk chair on wheels. And then in the corner, there was a beanbag chair. I wasn't going to sit in the beanbag chair. All around me, there were pictures on the walls, pictures of smiling kids, of pregnant women, of families, and a lot of pictures of women giving birth. There was also on the wall a cartoon that said, "Why does it take 50 million sperm to fertilize one egg?" Apparently, they can't ask for directions either. I was at the Arlington Women's Health Clinic, and we were trying to conceive our second child. The first one we did at home, the traditional way, with Tupperware and a turkey baster. See, I am co-parenting with a lesbian couple, and we live next door to each other. 23 years ago, rather than borrowing a cup of sugar, we all decided to have a family together, non-traditional family. So each woman was going to carry a child, and I am going to be the biological dad. So for the first one, Karen is the mom, and I'm the dad. And for a week, I just walked the Tupperware next door, knocked on the front door, gave it to Karen. She walked upstairs with a turkey baster. And 9 months later, Matt was born. When Matt was 3 years old, we decided to have baby number 2. So Kelly was the second mom up to the plate. I bought new Tupperware, and they bought new turkey baster. And every day for a week, I walk next door, knock on the door, give Kelly the sample. She'd walk upstairs, but nothing. So Kelly decided that we needed to up our game. And so that's when we decided to try intrauterine insemination. Now, I'm from Wisconsin. I'm 4-H. This was not foreign to me. The challenge was my job, because every day for a week I had to go to Arlington to provide the sample, and Kelly would show up in the afternoon. And at the time, I was a morning meteorologist on Channel 5. So I would wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, at the station at 3, on the air at 5. I didn't get home until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I didn't have time in the morning to do that. Actually, I had 90 minutes. I had from 9 o'clock in the morning until 10:30. So I had to go from Needham to Arlington. That's 16 miles one way, 22 minutes. So I had 44 minutes of drive time and 46 minutes of non-drive time. So the first day on Monday, I get in my car, go from Needham all the way to Arlington. I get there at 9:30. I have to be back at the station by 10:30. So I'm sitting in the reception area, and there's 2 guys with CVS bags and a stash in each bag, just sitting there. One guy says, "You look familiar. Do I know you?" And I'm like, "No, I have a familiar face." "I'm Charlie Sullivan. I'm from Arlington. Arlington High. Did you go to Arlington High?" "No, I'm from the Midwest." Wait. I know who you are. We watched you this morning. You're the weatherman. What are you doing here? Oh, I know what you're doing here. My wife, she loves you. Now, don't go thinking about my wife when you go inside there. I won't. My name is called. I go down the hallway. The woman gives me the sample, the jar, reminds me to put the lid on tight, lock the door, and have fun. So I go inside and give it the old college try. I actually think of the college and the fraternity I was in, and that just did the trick. Put the lid on. I gave it to the receptionist, and she says, "Wow, that was fast." Get back to the station in time. Day number 2, Tuesday, get in the car, get to Arlington by 9:30, sit in the reception area. This time I do have my CVS bag with a stash in it. And Charlie said, "How did it go with you?" Not really wanting to engage in conversation, I said, "I was commended for being fast. How did it go for you?" And he says, "It was kind of a no-go." The receptionist calls my name, go down the hallway, and she says, "Yeah, he was in there for 5 hours yesterday. I eventually had to tell him, it's okay, come back tomorrow." So I go into the room, decide to sit in the examination table, looking through the magazine, and I hear a commotion outside the door. And then I see the doorknob slowly start to turn, and I'm thinking, oh my God, did I lock it? But then I heard the click, and I thought, oh. But the adrenaline got me going. I put the lid on the sample, walked it to the receptionist, gave it to her with the wink, got back to the station in time. Day 3, Wednesday, came and went without a hitch. Day 4, Thursday, came and went without a hitch. Day 5, I woke up, and I was dreading the day because thunderstorms were in the forecast. The station likes to go wall-to-wall coverage, and I had to find a way to get out of there at 9 o'clock in the morning. So I pre-recorded 3 weathercasts, one with the thunderstorms to the west, one with the thunderstorms on top of us, and the third with the thunderstorms off to the east. I gave them the director to play just in case. I get on 128, it's a parking lot. I go to the breakdown lane, go zipping along, get into Arlington, get to the reception area, my name is called, go into the room, and nothing. Absolutely nothing. I hear thunder, the rumble of thunder high above. Now, at the station, they like to joke with the weather people that we love bad weather, that we get weather woodies over them. I hear thunder again, and apparently they were right. I put the lid on the jar, gave it to the receptionist, and 9 months later, Abby was born. So my kids, they're all grown now. Matt just graduated from NYU. Abby finished her freshman year at Smith. And when I think of deadlines now, I think that some deadlines can bring life, love, and a lot of joy. Thank you.
Okay, there's a lot going on. A Weatherman Woody is just something I didn't know about, but also I feel like there's some HIPAA violations in that story. Poor Chuck, like getting told on for taking 5 hours. Poor Chuck. My husband and I did the same kind of thing, and where he was doing his sampling was just construction outside the whole time, and he was like, I can never do this here. So one day I'll tell a story about our drives on Storrow Drive with like a deadline with a Tupperware. Also didn't really, like I asked people what stories they were going to tell today, and they're like, oh, it's this and a little bit of this, but it's turning out to be a real birthy kind of show, because here goes my story. I'm Sarah. I live in Winthrop. I'm not born nor raised here. And I am a storyteller. So now it's my turn. I introduced myself. How cheesy. So my stepmother has just gone into labor in the next room, and she is making these horrible breathing sounds, like she's turning into a werewolf or something. And so my dad and my little sister, who is 5, and I run into the bedroom to check, because this is not happening in a hospital. We run into the bedroom to check on her, and we find her seated on the floor with her back against the foot of the bed, hunched over, breathing like a werewolf. I should tell you, my dad and my stepmom are hippies, like hippies. And I mean, it's the middle of the 1980s, but they are still doing it. Tofu, futons, having babies at home. And I only live with them in the summertime. The rest of the year, I live with my mom on Cape Cod, where we do stuff like eat cheeseburgers at Friendly's and go to hospitals. So this is just out of my comfort zone, what is happening. But my dad is basically Han Solo. He's dashing, he's handsome, he can fix stuff, and he can make things that are scary and terrible seem kind of fun. And that's what he starts to do. He starts directing me and my sister through this process. Thea, my little sister, he tells her, go get the towels. Sarah, that's me, he says, turn on the oven. And I'm like, what is happening here? Like, are you gonna cook it? What? But I do, I turn on the oven. We put the towels in the oven. I guess that is something that is done. And then he stops me in the doorway of their very small house, and he puts his hand on my shoulder, and he says, Sarah, I want you to take the pictures. And he hands me a camera. And I'm like, oh, no. And it's a dilemma because my dad is my favorite. I worship him. And it has been my life's mission to be his most favorite beloved child, which has been super easy for the whole time that it was just me. But then he got remarried and had my little sister Thea. And now, in a half an hour, there's going to be somebody else here. And I just see the line for my dad's affection getting longer and longer. And I am determined to not be at the end of it. And so, even though I think this is weird and gross and possibly medically irresponsible, I say, okay, I'll do it. And he gives me one of those fatherly squeezes on the shoulder and says, thanks, kiddo. I knew I could count on you. And then he goes into the other room to call the midwife because she is not here yet. So I'm standing there with this camera. It's a real camera. Do you remember these? It has aperture and lenses. I'm 15. I've never used a real camera. And I'm trying to figure this out. And it's at this moment my stepmom decides she's going to move from her place on the floor up into the bed. And it's a futon, so it's only like 3 inches off the ground, which is a really good thing. Because the moment she shifts her body weight up and back and her butt hits the mattress, the baby falls out of her vagina. That's not the sound. I can't do sound effects. Let's just say it was a sad, soggy thud. And I am horrified. This is nothing like Little House on the Prairie. And that's what I had been told to expect. That's what my dad's. It's going to be just like Little House. There's going to be some screaming, some pushing, some panting, maybe a dab of a brow. And then a screamy little baby will be born. There was no pushing. There was no pant. The baby just fell out like on accident. And it's not screaming. And it's not moving. And it's purple. Super purple. But then suddenly my dad is back in the room and he scooped the baby up into his arms and he's got this length of tube or hose or cord, like something from a home brew kit. And he's filing up the baby's nose and putting it down into its lungs and siphoning out this liquid. The stuff is splattering out of the hose. It's splattering out of his mouth. It's like he's trying to steal gas from Boss Hogg's car. I'm agog. And he does 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, big splashes of stuff. He pulls the cord out of the baby's nose, spanks it on the bottom. It makes a sound I won't haunt you with by repeating now. He wraps it in the warm towel, hands it to my stepmother. It's a girl. It's at this moment I realize I haven't taken one single picture. My stepmom lets us know with a real raspy shout that she's going to need a hot fudge sundae right away. Now, this is in my comfort zone. So once the midwife arrives, she is so late, I volunteer to go with my father to town for the sundae. And this ride in the car takes place inside a palpable and unbroken awkward silence, like the awkwardest of silences. He says nothing to me. Maybe he's still having his out-of-body experience. So this leaves me silent in the side passenger seat of the car with all of my own adolescent horrible thoughts. I'm jealous. There's now another daughter that isn't me. I am horrified. I saw my stepmother's vagina. All of it. And I am a failure. How did I not take the picture? But even though I'm 15 and selfish and absurd, I'm able to push away all of these thoughts and be left with the one remaining meaningful thought, which is that I have just watched my father save my little sister's life. But if you ask my dad about this, which I have, he will tell you he had nothing to do with it. That it was, in fact, Jesus Christ working through him who saved my little sister's life. Because my dad and everyone on that side of the family are born-again Christians, and that's cool. But I'll tell you what, I was there, and it was not Jesus Christ. And it wasn't even Han Solo. It was my dad, and he is cooler than both of those dudes. Thank you. Nervous dancing. It's so weird to tell the story and then just stay up here, right? That's my dad. It's a true story, really happened. That sister is 35 now and has 2 of her own kids, which she had inside a real hospital. It's one of those things like, don't try this at home. It was a crazy experience. I definitely listened to a lot of after it all happened and we came home with the Sunday, I put on my Walkman and listened to Desperado by the Eagles. And I was like, this. But we're friends now. It's cool. So at this point in this extravagant afternoon, we're just kind of throwing it out there. If there's anyone in the audience who'd like to get up here and tell a story. Oh my goodness, there's someone right here. I believe her name is Judy. Now, here's something I'm just going to say. Everybody that just told a story, we do this a lot. And we love it. But what we love the best is when someone else is like, I want to do that. So I want everybody to give Judy a huge round of applause, because this is scary to get up here and do this, and it's also awesome. And that's how you get more storytellers.
Oh, those lights are bright. Hi, everyone. I thank you for all coming today, and I commend Sarah and Deb behind the window back there for setting this all up, and it's awesome. So my story is called Becoming a Widow. In the middle of July 2007, my life changed. I lost my husband to esophageal cancer. He had a lump on his neck, and went to the doctors, and there was only a 30% chance of survival. And he just, said, I don't want to go through the treatments or anything like that. Prior to having him being diagnosed with cancer, I lost my full-time job at a major law firm in Boston. And so my life started going through a whirlwind, spiraling out of control, sort of. But I got to be with my husband the last month or so, and I always say there's a reason for everything. So I know the law firm would never let me spend the last month with my husband. So I got to be by his side, and we owned a 2-family house, no kids, and it was tough with. I didn't have an income. He owned his own business here in Winthrop. So he did not want to be, all hooked up and everything. So I, did it up until, it was time to say goodbye. And because I wouldn't want to wish that upon my worst enemy, to be just seeing them, hooked up and all that. So for a while, I hosted foreign exchange students in my house, and so that was cool. I mean, learning a different language, and I got little presents when they came, and Switzerland has the best chocolate. So then I ended up since I didn't have an income, and we had 2 mortgages on the house, I had to sell it, and so it was kind of a fast sell. I didn't get what I wanted to. The house was built in the 1800s. And so sold it. The new owners wanted me to stay in the house, so I rented back. And unfortunately, I kind of couldn't afford the rent either, because I just had little part-time jobs, nothing major. I was taking caregiver jobs with the elderly, and did reset jobs through this company that worked for Family Dollar, and just little things. So I didn't want to, that was not a professional thing to, to not pay the rent and everything, and I didn't want to leave them in a bind. So I was evicted, and that's, that's the only thing that could have been done. And so I ended up being homeless, because my immediate family, by the way, is in Montana. So I didn't have any family out here. I had really good close friends, but I didn't want to put a burden on them. And then so I was homeless for 9 months, trying to get back up on my feet. My stuff was in storage. And so then I got this sympathy card when my husband passed away from now I can call her, she was like a dear sister to me. Her name was Nancy, and she was the director of the Winthrop Senior Center. So I said, you know what, something tells me to go down there and introduce myself and tell her thank you for this card. So I did, and so she was a godsend. She gave me some ideas, and helped me get back on my feet. She wanted to know if I wanted to volunteer at the senior center, so I started playing trivia pursuit with them. They're hilarious. It was like, I called it the social hour, because all they wanted to do mostly was that, but we we did some trivia too. And so her family kind of adopted me as the second, part of my second family and everything. So did that, and then did a lot of other volunteer work. And then someone suggested to do my own cable show. And actually, the person is in the audience that got me started. Thanks, Miss B. It'll be 12 years this December that I've been doing life issues. My set is actually behind that curtain. And I really enjoy it. It's a resource information show, and it's a question answer, and I have enjoyed doing it. I always find new organizations or new people. I've already connected with somebody, actually 2 people today, this afternoon here, and so I learned about becoming a widow just by losing my husband, and because I didn't know, what do I do? Where do I go? So in memory of my husband, I started a nonprofit. I piggybacked off at Life Issues, and I started this organization called Those Who Can, for those in need. I just happened to pick a long name for a nonprofit. People say, what? Say that? I said, just put the initials down, if you want to write it down. And so we connect people and resources from the greater Boston North Shore area that needs some extra help going through bumps in their life. They have an aunt that needs some elderly care, whatever it may be, anything to do with life. And we hold an annual resource fair in September. That's around the anniversary of his passing. Last year we moved it to Lynn for the first time to kind of spread our wings, and we had a great turnout. It's a family type event. We have the reptiles, and we have magic show, and we have food, and we have face painting and everything. And then we hold an annual fundraiser in September, in the spring, and so that's basically, we have a website so we can post the resources up there. But I know that I have special angels watching over me, because unfortunately my dear friend passed away 4 years ago from cancer. So, so people are always watching over, and there's a reason for everything. So.
Is this like the first time you got up and told a story in a micro? Like you just did it. That was awesome. Very excited. Oh, oh, well, it's a TV show. It's a little different with live audience in here. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, that was awesome. It's so hard to just kind of get up and do it in front of people that some of you don't even know who they are. But I did not know about that resource center, and now I do, and I feel really excited to share that information with people. And I just love how when things are like the super worst and that something comes out of it that is meaningful for others in a strengthening and helpful way. So I'm glad to hear your story. Thank you. Do we have another round of applause for Judy? Anybody else want to share a story? Amy? Oh my gosh, you guys, this is Amy. Everybody, welcome Amy to the microphone. I just have to say this. Can I say who you are? I have known this woman for 22. She was my hairdresser for 20 years. I used to come back from New York to see her. And then she was like, you know what? Chapter 2, y'all. And now she's a flippin' lawyer. I'm not saying, I don't know what you're going to say, but like this, give it up for Amy.
Thank you. I've never done this before, not even close. So cut me some slack, help me with my microphone. Yeah, so I didn't come up with anything ahead of time. This is very impromptu for it. So hopefully it will be cogent enough to make sense.
Come on now, baby.
Yeah, no, this is good. Take your time.
Somebody sing the Jeopardy
All right. It's the winter of 2006. I am a young married mom of a 1.5-year-old. And it's dinner time. I feed my daughter, and I'm waiting for my husband to come home from work. And it's got to be getting kind of 5-ish, 6-ish. I call him. I'm like, what time you'll be home? I'll have dinner ready. And he's like, I'm on my way now. Be there in a half an hour. So great, get dinner ready. It's on the table, ready to go. Clock keeps ticking, time goes by, he's not here. I keep calling, oh, you wouldn't believe it. Something came up, this, that, and the other thing. Keep calling. I'm doing my mom thing, taking care of her, whatever. Put her to bed. It's getting later and later. At this point, it's 10 o'clock. I'm getting tired. I go to bed, but I'm laying there. I can't fall asleep. I keep calling. Goes to voicemail, nothing. I probably fell asleep for a little while, wake up, call. It's got to be like 2 in the morning. He finally picks up. I'm like, oh my God, what happened? Where are you? Oh, you wouldn't believe it. I got pulled over, was probably drinking too much. I'm at state police, Weston, Mass. But I look at my phone and it says Mary Ann's Flower Shop, Brighton, Mass. I'm like, that's weird. So, I ask him like, well, okay, he's got to go. He hangs up. I'm like, okay, what do I do? So I call the local police. I have his license plate number. They're like, lady, go back to bed. He had said something about the state police. Call the state police in Weston, and also, they think I'm insane. Some more time passes. I fall asleep. It's January or February. It's freezing. My daughter's freezing. I go and I get her. I figure it out. The heat's gone. No one paid the heat bill. So I grab her in bed and I put her under the covers and we're huddling there and it's getting later and later. At some point it's getting closer to 5 in the morning and I'm like, okay, I don't know what to do here. I don't know what's going on. So I keep calling him. He finally picks up. I'm on my way home. I'll explain it when I get home. Okay, great. He comes home. He sits down. I have a problem. Okay, well, what's going on? I didn't pay the heat. I'm an alcoholic. Oh, okay. Well, what are we going to do about this? It's really cold. I'll go pay the bill, and then I'm going to come home. I'm going to check myself into detox. All right. Let's do that. Great. So he comes home a little while later, and, we get the heat on, and goes to detox. It's been almost 20 years now. Detox did not work. And not much did. I spent another year or two trying to figure out what to do about the situation and got pregnant, had a baby, and 6 months later, it was over. And then the same month, I got sued. My hair salon, my landlord, everything fell apart completely. And there I was. I've got a 3-year-old and a newborn. I'm on my own. I've owned this hair salon, getting sued, I'm getting divorced now. And yeah, everything fell apart. It all worked out. I lost my lawsuit by a lot, but I got divorced and time passed, more went wrong. I entered into law school and it's been 4 years and I think 2 weeks and I've been a lawyer. I used this lawsuit, I used this divorce, and yeah, now I work with survivors of domestic violence. And over time, and with a lot more detail, I understood that domestic violence takes lots of different forms. And it's not always just physical abuse. It's emotional, financial, verbal, psychological, and it's complicated. But now I get to go to work every day and help people avoid some of the pitfalls I ran into. And my daughter's going into her senior year of high school at Winthrop. And my son is a sophomore, and we're doing good. So a little bit of happy ending. Thank you, guys.
Oh my gosh. I am so glad you just did that. You guys, I lived through a lot of that story. She's leaving a lot out. I want to do like a Netflix series with you. Because he who shall not be named reminds me of a lot of these people we've been hearing about on like the Tinder swindler, just like, this doesn't matter, you can edit this out, just liars, right? Like I've had it with liars. I'm all set. I mean, I lie to my mom about like if I can come visit or not, but that's not the same thing. That is not the same thing. Thank you so much, Amy. I felt that because I love you. Anybody else out there want to like spill your guts? Come on, this is it. I mean, it's air conditioned, so we can hang out for a little longer. Feels good. Anybody else? Anybody else? You know what else we have? If you don't feel it right now, we have a sign-up sheet in the lobby, which also has delicious cookies. If you're interested, like not right now because everyone's looking at you, but if you want to think about it a little bit, you can sign up and be on our email list and find out about the next time that we're going to do one of these. We also offer coaching. If you're like, I think I have a story, but I don't know, I can help you with that. Just sign up on our email list outside, and we'd love to have more folks tell us their stories and then play them on TV for everyone to watch. So thanks again to Mike Cabral, to Deb, who's behind the curtain, just like in The Wizard of Oz, and for all of you for coming out today and sharing your hot, sweaty, but AC afternoon with us. We really appreciate it, and huzzah! Please feel free to drink a lot of the iced coffee.